Tom Swarbrick on LBC.
10 to 6, Friday evening, Tom Swarbrick here on LBC, which, as you know, means one thing. The greatest storytelling on the wireless, Simon Marks, American Week.
Tom, let's start with Andy Burnham's Welcome to Number 10 gift from President Donald Trump. It came last night in the form of extended tariffs unveiled by the Trump administration that will do further damage to the UK's economy. The existing 10% across-the-board duties on British products that were about to expire will now be extended indefinitely.
For over 100 years, the United States has had a law on the books prohibiting the import of goods made with forced labor. This is common sense.
Jameson Greer, the US trade representative, telling CNN yesterday that more than 80 countries worldwide are now facing new tariffs of between 10 and 12.5% because, he claimed with a straight face, they do less to enforce a prohibition on the use of goods made with forced labor than that global paragon of virtue, the United States.
In other countries, no one really has these types of laws. And even in that small handful of countries that have them, they don't really enforce it. And so we have gone to the world frankly, over years and across administrations to try to get other countries to act on this. Finally, we have put our foot down and we have told countries, you need to take action. You need to prohibit the import of goods made with forced labor, and you need to enforce these laws so that we all have a level playing field.
Now, you might be wondering what the use of forced labor in, say, North Korea or Malaysia has suddenly got to do with British exports to the United States of, say, a decent bit of Stilton. And the answer, of course, is absolutely nothing. Yes, the UK definitely should have a law banning the import of goods into the UK that are produced overseas with forced labour, but whether we choose to do that or not, this is all sleight of hand after the American president found himself cornered. Back in February, the US Supreme Court eviscerated Donald Trump's so-called reciprocal tariffs, which of course were not really reciprocal after all, and they forced him back to the drawing board. So instead of doing what the court wants, which is simply to take his case for tariffs to Congress like a normal president and secure the backing of lawmakers for them, he instead ordered Mr. Greer to engage in yet more jiggery pokery. So suddenly, any country that doesn't have a law, like the American one, banning imports produced with forced labour, gets hit with tariffs, at least until the Supreme Court in many months' time considers whether these ones are legal.
What the Trump administration is doing is picking the pockets of American consumers, and after Donald Trump promised he would lower costs on day one, he puts in place tariffs that have done nothing but raise prices for consumers.
Democrats like Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts are racing to remind voters just 4 months before midterm elections that prices for pretty much everything are about to rise again. But the Trump administration simply denies the basic facts, like you might deny the law of gravity, as she found out when she questioned Mr. Greer on Capitol Hill.
Have Trump's tariffs increased prices for American families?
Senator, no. Core inflation fell to 2.6% year on year.
So you're saying that what the Congressional Budget Office and the Treasury Department's own numbers, that families are paying an average of $1,700 more. Are you saying your own Treasury Department and your own Congressional Budget Office just don't know what they're talking about?
Well, I'm interested in seeing what Treasury numbers you're talking about. No one's given them to me to look at, so I want to verify those.
Actually, they've been out there in public now for at least the last 6 months.
And indeed they have. As we have pointed out before on American Week, the US government's own data published on its websites clearly shows prices on many basic goods are rising faster than inflation, despite entirely false White House claims that the tariffs are not being passed on to Americans in the form of higher prices. American voters are essentially being told by the Trump administration not to believe what they can see with their own eyes every time they go shopping. And that's before we get to Iran, the Strait of Hormuz, and the once again soaring price of oil.
Their drones are down 84%, their missiles are down 91%. I had a newspaper say they're in stronger position today than they were 4 months ago. No, that's not the truth.
So let's interrogate that oft-repeated claim. Iran has, since the war began in February, suddenly discovered it can upend the entire world economy by closing the Strait of Hormuz. The Americans don't seem to be able to get it reopened. The president's own Defense Department, in classified briefings, has admitted the regime still has thousands of missiles and drones that could yet cause substantial substantial risk to the US and its allies in the region. The Iranians still have air defense systems that the US claimed had been obliterated, which is one reason why the president has now spent 13 consecutive nights launching fresh strikes on the country, and is now claiming he may soon even commit possible war crimes by blowing up Iran's bridges and power plants. And this week, the Iranians still had the proven capability to kill American troops.
All of them said very strongly, we cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon. They won't have a nuclear weapon. So we're going to honor them. For me, it's one of the hardest things to do as a president.
The president departing Andrews Air Force Base for a ceremony in Delaware honouring 4 American service members who died in the conflict this week. 3 of them were killed in an Iranian strike on their barracks in Jordan. The 4th died in northern Iraq during a controlled detonation of an Iranian drone. But on Capitol Hill, like the president he slavishly serves, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth would brook no criticism, regardless of how apparent it becomes that America is all at sea in Iran. Here, at length, the Secretary of War coming up against Senator Gary Peters, a Democrat from Michigan.
I think your characterization of this incredible effort as a failure is reckless. And I think it's irresponsible. And I think it smears the sacrifice of the troops that are out there making on behalf of the American people to ensure that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon. Shame on you and others who call this a quagmire and a failure, and then you want to turn around and say you support the warfighter. Either you do or you don't.
If you listen to my comments, you would have heard me say how amazing our warfighters are.
I heard failure. And the word heard, I heard exactly what you said.
I will tell you how I use the word failure, because I use the word failure to their leaders. You, sir, are the failure, not the men and women who are on that front line, not the men and women who hold up their honor with distinction. But if there's a lack of a winning strategy, they're in harm's way. Their leaders have failed them. And that's what's happening. We have political leadership. You don't have a strategy. You don't have a long-term plan to actually win this war. Win the war. The men and women are going to be able to do it, but they need to have leadership. When will you show leadership? When will you show leadership? Why don't you show some leadership and stand up to your fellow Democrats who won't fund the troops, who stand and play partisan politics while you don't give us the money? You want to stand up here and talk about the troops? You won't show any political courage to actually fund our department because you have Trump derangement syndrome and can't actually commit to anything meaningful. So I put this on you, Senator. Secretary Hegseth, you have trillions, you have over $1 trillion. You're asking for $1.5 trillion. It's not a question of money. It's a question of leadership and understanding what it takes to actually win.
Political cowardice of Democrats who won't fund the troops.
Just on the facts, so far the administration claims it has spent $37.5 billion on the war. Democrats believe the actual sum is much higher. Mr. Hegseth is asking for another $67 billion to fund operations in the Middle East, suggesting that even he doesn't believe the conflict is going to wrap up anytime soon. Congress has been given no opportunity to get involved in the decision to go to war, and the White House now wants $1.5 trillion in defence funding for next year, an all-time record. Now, talking about money, there is a bit of a mystery underway in Washington, and it relates to Venezuelan oil.
The people are happy in Venezuela right now. They can't believe what's happened. We have the biggest companies, the biggest oil companies in the world going in and doing business like nobody ever thought possible. And we're taking some, we should, and they're taking some. And, you know, it's very interesting that they're making more money. Chris was showing me some numbers. They're making more money, Venezuela, now than they've ever made before.
In the midst of those dubious claims, he said that the United States is taking some of Venezuela's oil and should be. What he's not telling you is that nobody can find the $13 billion in revenues the Trump administration has so far collected from Venezuelan oil since January's U.S. attack on the country. $13 billion is missing, with the Financial Times reporting this week that the Trump administration has given diverging accounts of what it is doing with the money, sometimes describing its role as that of a custodian of the cash, at other times the president indicating that the United States is simply trousering it. And remember, 1 month after Venezuela was devastated by 2 earthquakes, with tens of thousands of people still missing, you might think $13 billion would be of use right now.
Is any of that money going to the Venezuelan people?
Well, I don't know.
Venezuelan opposition leader Leopoldo Lopez, a former mayor of Caracas who then became a prison prisoner of conscience in the country, appearing this week on CNN.
We are told by the U.S. officials that funding is going to an account with the oversight of the U.S., with the audit of KPMG. I have not seen any of the reports.
He doesn't know where the money is. Congress doesn't know where the money is. Some lawmakers have been asking about it for months. And let me remind you, this is all coming in the same week that we learnt the president's own social media company, Truth Social, is asking finance houses and banks to pay $100,000 a month for early access to the president's postings, so they can then make a mint over his pronouncements before the rest of us get a chance to read them. We've never seen grift like this, even by the standards of a country that is no stranger to it. And if you want to understand, Tom, why Trump is so determined that one way or another Democrats will not win the midterms in November, just keep following the money.
From Washington, D.C., Simon Marks, American Week.